Saitama is destroying the Hero Association before our very eyes. Right now, everyone is worried about a ton of different threats. We've got the recent formation of Neo Heroes, a rival organization that's stolen a bunch of high-profile and S-class heroes and recruited a ton of really strong new ones too. There are internal forces trying to corrupt the association from the inside. Characters like Drive Knight and Genos know that Metal Knight is secretly trying to rule the world. The increasing threat of God has a ton of top heroes doing things they otherwise wouldn't. And of course, there is the increase in mysterious beings and their skyrocketing power levels. Yet no one seems to realize how destructive Saitama's presence is, because unknown to all of them, he is either related or connected to every one of those problems. He is the biggest threat to the Hero Association as we know it. First, although the One Punch Man manga is over 10 years old now, the in-world passage of time is shorter, a lot shorter. To put things into perspective, it's only been 2 months since Genos became Saitama's disciple. Keith Baldy hasn't been a professional hero for very long. But since becoming one, he's defeated a ton of monsters, criminals, and even heroes alike. Not to mention the 3 years he spent as an independent hero, but we'll get back to that. You might think that because Saitama is so strong, he's been nothing but a saving grace for humanity without them even knowing. But that's not totally true. Don't get me wrong, the Hero Association has a ton of dirty laundry and no shortage of dark secrets. But at the very least, they do have proper protocols and rules, all of which Saitama pretty much completely ignores. Right after becoming professional heroes, Genos and Saitama were called into a lecture hall where pretty much everything they needed to know was covered. And the entire time, Saitama was chewing gum and not listening at all. It's clear Snek explained everything from disaster levels to hierarchies and even the identities of various S-class heroes. They were even given a booklet explaining everything they needed to know, but Saitama never read his and lost it. Genos is the only reason Saitama ended up learning about these things later on. If it wasn't for him, Saitama would have been kicked out of the association at C class. He had no idea that he needed to do something heroic every week at that rank. Then again, Genos is the only reason Saitama learned about the Hero Association in the first place. Saitama has casually defeated a ton of monsters without the Hero Association knowing. But unlike Genos, who tends to completely incinerate his targets, Saitama just leaves monster corpses all over the place. And this isn't just a simple case of littering, which funny enough Saitama seems to be against. One of the most straightforward causes of monsterization is obviously the consumption of monster parts. Beast King was the House of Evolution's second strongest creature, just behind Carnage Kabuto and above Mosquito Girl. Saitama, of course, had no trouble turning him to mush, but it's not like he cleaned up afterwards. Instead, a flock of crows gobbled it up and pretty much immediately transformed into little monsters themselves. Mind you, crows are already some of the smartest animals in the world. They're said to possess levels of intelligence comparable to those of a 7-year-old child. They're not the same mysterious beings, but we've even seen 3 disaster-level demon crows end up being members of the Monster Association. Another time, Saitama killed the final survivor of the Sea Folk, who claimed to be the new Deep Sea King. Afterwards, he left its body parts in the water for the local fish to eat. Mind you, this was in K-City's nature park, a place where people often go fishing. And even if they're not eaten, just touching monster corpses can still end up being poisonous to humans. There's no doubt a ton of reasons for monsters to arise, but I can't help but notice just how many of them are related to animals. For every monster Saitama kills, he can end up causing even more to exist. But they're not the only ones munching on monsters that Saitama beats, because he does too. The association pays its heroes based on their feats, and since Saitama doesn't report anything, he is extremely poor. At one point, his bank account balance was 20 yen, or 13 cents USD. So, eating monster meat is an affordable alternative for him. Combo Infinity severely injured both Spring Mustachio and Golden Ball, 2 A-class heroes. Reinforcements were called in, but by the time they got there, the monster was already gone. And seeing the devastation, they assumed a huge monster was responsible and were too afraid to investigate any further. In reality, Saitama ripped off all the creature's hair and added it to his food since he forgot to buy kombu soup stock from the store. And the only reason he decided to go after the sea folk was to get a bunch of free seafood since he missed the bargain sale the day before. Again, Saitama doesn't report anything. He ran into a messenger of the sea folk and killed it before any information could be gained. and when Genos asked him about it, he had already forgotten. It's so bad that Saitama isn't even sure if he's already killed Genos' sworn enemy, Mad Cyborg. He can barely remember any of the monsters he's killed. That's a ton of valuable information that the Hero Association doesn't have access to. Overall, the Association knows very little about him. His record prior to becoming a hero is virtually non-existent. His only notable achievements have been the defeat of Speedo Sound Sonic and helping out his senior heroes against the Giant Meteor, the Deep Sea King, and the battle against Garo. That's it. They have no idea that he has beaten Sonic 14 times at this point, that he was the only reason the meteor was destroyed, that he one-shot the Deep Sea King, who had already beaten multiple heroes including S-Class ones, or that he was the only one who could stop Garo in the end. And that's ignoring everything else he's done. And that lack of information has been detrimental to pretty much everyone. When it came to the meteor, the Hero Association was so confident that their heroes would take care of the problem that they didn't tell the local civilians that it was coming until it was 21 minutes from impact. That way, when the day was saved, their credibility and financial donations would rise tremendously. But that's not how things went. Metal Knight, Genos, and Bang couldn't do anything to stop it. It was solely thanks to Saitama that it was destroyed, but it wasn't pretty. The shattered pieces rained down and caused a ton of damage. Miraculously, nobody died, but the results weren't as sweet as the Association had hoped for. Honestly, Saitama just didn't want the thing to ruin his part of town, and he figured the results were good enough. But due to their misunderstanding, most citizens blamed him for messing things up and ruining the city. Saitama's response to this made it clear that he does not care what other people think, and that really did not help his popularity. Even if he was only C-Class, it was not a good look for the Association. From then on, rumors about Saitama began to spread. People discredited all his feats and called him an embarrassment to all heroes. Baldy has risen the ranks from C-Class to B-Class and later to A-Class in record time, but nobody is willing to give him any credit since most people believe he cheated his way up. He even gets hate mail over it. Not even the executives of the Hero Association are entirely sure if he's legit or not. Meanwhile, Genos theorizes that if the Association actually knew how capable his master is, they would have had Metal Knight handle the falling debris and completely avoid devastation. And if that happened, Saitama would have probably risen to at least S-Class rank 5 immediately afterwards. Speaking of Metal Knight, boy did Saitama ruin this man's plans. For the Hero Association, Metal Knight's various contributions have been indispensable. After a city was wiped out in seconds by the Dark Matter thieves, it was decided that Hero Association headquarters would be expanded. It was expected to take the Japanese government several decades to just clear out all the rubble, but the Hero Association believed they'd be able to handle things in only 10 years. To do so, they entrusted their entire reconstruction fund to Metal Knight. In the end, he got the whole thing done in a week. So when they added a residential housing complex for the rich, they let him handle their security systems and robots. These things had reactive artificial intelligence that let them scale against different disaster levels. Enemies like the Sky King that attacked their old base to send a message to humanity would have been killed instantly. Too bad Saitama decided to turn 2 monsters into his pets and bring them home with him. The robots attacked, and naturally, Saitama retaliated. They tried their best to upscale the response level, but Saitama crushed them all. Little did he know that these things cost 9 billion yen, or more than $60 million to develop each. So yeah, there was no way he was going to admit that he destroyed them and just decided to say that they blew up on their own. After that mess, and the fact that he wasn't around for the alien invasion or Monster Association threats until all the fighting was over, Metal Knight completely lost their trust and funding. But it wouldn't be the last time he'd cost the Hero Association's affiliates a ton of money. For a good while, the organization was able to facilitate something known as hero gambling. Secret investors were brought together to watch heroes fight monsters, and they'd bet on which hero would manage to take it down. This was an off-the-book source of income for the association, and sometimes they'd rig the matches so only the major sponsors present would win. They even prepared and sent monsters out themselves and disguised higher-ranking heroes as weaker ones to throw people off. So, when Saitama came out of nowhere and one-shot what was supposed to be a pretty strong creature, it caused a lot of problems. Their top sponsor was really upset, and everyone lost money since no one bet on Baldy. In fact, the odds of him winning were absolutely horrible. The association was also secretly containing an entire floor's worth of demon-level monsters, and Saitama slaughtered all of them, to the point where they weren't even recognizable afterwards. These monsters were originally supposed to be traded to an outside organization for a ton of cash, but thanks to Saitama, that deal was ruined. After that, he clashed with Tatsumaki at headquarters, which threw even more dirt on Metal Knight's name when the entire building shook. The outside of the place was completely devastated, and their fight even extended to H-City. Now, because the Hero Association exists, these days most people call on heroes to save them, but that doesn't mean the police aren't a thing anymore. They're actually not on the best terms with the organization. But despite this, the association was really close to having law enforcement in their pocket. If that were to happen, they would be nearly untouchable. But just before that could happen, Saitama shut it down. He dressed up as a cop and took down a monster for tons of heroes, civilians, and reporters to see. Saitama's also had a pretty big impact on his fellow heroes. After learning about Saitama's true power through Dr. Genus and Genos, Zombie Man decided to go on hiatus for a while so he'd be able to focus on breaking his limiter. The loss of an S-Class hero, while the association was already in the middle of losing a bunch of people to Neo heroes, was a heavy blow. And now we've got the #1 A-Class hero, Sweet Mask, being a fan of his too. So much so that he refused to endorse or work with a rising idol group of new recruits. That sort of publicity would have been great for them. But that can't happen anymore. When Saitama moved to Hero Association headquarters after becoming A-Class rank 39, because the guy was such a total mystery, the A-Class rank 31 hero, Forte, decided to test him. Saitama didn't actually fight the guy, but Forte did end up getting hit by a car because of the interaction. That and the fact that he was wearing headphones in the middle of a parking lot. Saitama is the primary source of King's unreal reputation and status as an S-Class hero. The Hero Association assumed that many of his feats were actually due to King possessing unparalleled strength, and the rumors have only gotten wilder over time. When it comes to monsters, Saitama has had a profound impact on their community as well. These days, he's looking after 3 of the Monster Association's remnants and refuses to let the Hero Association mess with them. Overgrown Rover was a disaster-level dragon monster, but now that he's small, he's become Saitama's pet dog. Black S is a final survivor of nearly 54 trillion cells and was one of the most dangerous entities the S-Class heroes had ever faced. But now, he's Saitama's pet monkey. Monoko is a sweetheart with an unknown disaster level, but is an offshoot of Gyoro, the figurehead leader of the Monster Association. And now, she's Saitama's friend that he invites over for curry. But what's crazy is that even before all these relationships were formed, Saitama unknowingly gave the Monster Association a place to grow. The Z-City ghost town he lived in possessed an extremely high monster appearance rate compared to others. There were several theories as to why this was. First was the idea that the monsters could contact one another and continue to draw in others. Second was that there was a colony of monsters that continues to create new ones. The third was that there was a queen monster giving birth to monsters of various different kinds. The truth is that rumors about Saitama's strength made him out to be an unknown monster, and that drew the attention of several others. Because of that, no humans or even heroes would step foot in the area, which made it perfect for the Monster Association to set up shop and prepare their forces undisturbed. So really, it's Saitama's fault they were able to become as dangerous as they did. Even when it comes to Garo, Saitama easily knocked the guy out when they ran into each other. Not once, but twice. If he had simply reported the incident, Garo would have been arrested just like Speedo Sound Sonic was. Or he'd be taken care of by Bang and Bomb before things really got out of hand. But at the same time, Saitama dealing with extremely dangerous threats without anyone knowing may have also limited the growth of his fellow heroes and the association as a whole. For 3 years, Saitama had saved the world more times than he could count. Even just recently, he handled a dispute between 2 groups that spanned more than 800 years. He unsealed the embodiment of destruction known as the Cruel Dragon, and killed it instantly. When the Dark Matter Thieves invaded Earth, all of the S-Class heroes were left to fight tooth and nail against grunts while he took care of Boros and his 2 greatest warriors. And supposedly, one of them was the greatest telekinetic in the universe. That would have been a great opportunity for someone like Tatsumaki to test her skills. But instead of facing serious threats then and there, the S-Class heroes continued to all be full of themselves, only to be completely out of their depth during the Monster Association arc. Not to mention the fact that Saitama is known as the abominable fist that is turned against God, further incurring the entity's wrath upon them all. When the Neo heroes began their scouting, they approached Genos with an offer, one that he even extended to Saitama. This could have potentially saved the Hero Association from him, but Saitama refused and decided to stay. There is no doubt that he is going to continue causing issues for them. But to be fair, he is partially responsible for the Hero Association's creation in the first place. With his very first act of saving that butt-chin kid from Crablante, he inspired the same kid's super rich grandfather to create an organization for heroes. So even though Saitama is pretty much destroying everything they built, you could say that he has shown up to clean house and restore it to what it was originally supposed to be. In the comments, let me know what you guys think is the worst thing Saitama has done to the Hero Association. As always, I am Slice of Otaku. Thank you all so much for watching and have an awesome day. I love you.